Hey everybody, how are you doing today? Glad you could join us. We're talking more about Aptera and how they're going to get your Aptera on the road for you and the steps that they're taking to do so. So let's get into this baby right now. All right, welcome back to my channel. It's good to have you here. We're talking more about Aptera, and this time we're going to talk more about the podcast that Steve Fambro was on and how he's talking about the steps that they are taking to get Aptera on the road and the other avenues that they're venturing into. So let's go ahead and take a listen to what he actually talked about more on the podcast where we go next. So let's check this out.
Speaking of a better way of doing things or a different way of doing things, we should temporarily back up for a moment. What is the value proposition of the Aptera? How is it different from other EVs on the market today?
Aptera has a singular mission. That's to make every journey powered by the sun. That's it. That mission not only guides us in the development of this product and bringing it to market, but also in our business development for other segments. We have technologies now. We have this rich IP portfolio that's quite extensive that can be leveraged in other industries altogether. And that vision of every journey powered by the sun, that vision is really what guides us. It's what will guide future product creation. It'll always drive efficiencies more so than any other kind of quasi-competitor in the space because our focus is on how to make the journey powered by the sun. More and more of the journey, not just 40 miles, but 50 miles, 60 miles, 100 miles. How do we make more and more of it powered by the sun? So that's going to create an eternal pressure for the company to make things more lightweight, make things more efficient, to always have the most energy dense batteries and the most efficient solar panels and the most efficient power conversion electronics. That's what will drive the engineering, not market surveys or things like that. But how do we make more of the journey powered by the sun? That's Aptera in a nutshell. That's what we believe, and that's what dictates how we design the product and how we find other revenue streams for our intellectual property.
When we last spoke in late 2022, the plan was to begin full production on the Aptera sometime in late 2023. How close is the Aptera Motors team to wrapping out that final 0.1% of the design that will allow the vehicle to go into production and deliver to consumers?
I will answer that in two parts. I would say on everything that you can see, what we call the A surfaces. So it could be a solar panel, a light or body structure, things like that, even things that you don't see structures, but I would say mechanical, physical things. We are 99.9999% complete. The handful of things that are probably not going to be resolved until we start building the low volume PI builds. Those are left as they are, and we say we'll resolve those once we start building the PI builds, the production / progressively intent. So the thinking is we're building the core of the vehicle off of tooled production parts. And the extraneous parts, if you will, some of those may be soft tooled. Some of those we may change the design even because it doesn't function the way we want to, like a seal. We have already tooled dies for extruding seals around the seals that go around the door and everything else. But there's a possibility that we just don't like them, that they don't seal well. So we need to change that. I think every manufacturer ends up kind of at that level of completeness. And then of course, what happens once you start production, then you have changes even that you want to do and you roll them out whenever it makes economic sense. So in some regards, you're never really done. But to get to the point where you're done enough to start production, I would say in all the physical, mechanical things, to my knowledge, there's only, I say, a tiny handful of things.
What's the difference between the early 2023 Delta production intent vehicle and then PI1, and the upcoming PI2?
Yeah, so Delta kind of became the PI program. And so Delta really represents the final state. Basically, the high costs, the big CapEx components that are tooled for the vehicle, those things aren't going to change because we realized that the Delta program needed to be segmented and that they would all not be the same, that they would be progressively improved upon during the build process. number PI 6, for example, being more mature than PI 1, as an example, we changed that program from Delta to really the PI builds. So that's the same. That would describe the physical elements, the things you can touch, the structures, that kind of thing. On the software side, I would say we're still have a mountain of work to do. Like, we will be writing software up until we ship the vehicle. And Aptera really is turning into a software company because so much of the vehicle is configured by software. Elements of it are really software configurable. That's different. Like, I think some new manufacturers are doing that, but most manufacturers don't. And they outsource all their software and firmware to tier ones. Aptera is incredibly vertically integrated on that electrical hardware, software, and firmware. It's the biggest part of our company now, is writing and testing that. That part of the program will continue, not only up until production, but it'll continue full speed even after launch, because there'll be update after update after update, as we've seen with many other manufacturers. And we'll be able to push those updates out over the air, and we'll have to come into any kind of dealership or have someone come to the vehicle to reflash or anything like that. But it's the only way to do it. You don't stop the software development once the vehicle ships. You want to continue to test, to find bugs, or to find improvements, things that can run faster, to make things more efficient. You might even change the functionality of something. We have that capability now because we control all of those layers.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about how the automobile is pretty old. I mean, the first one was patented back in 1886 by Carl Benz. But the idea that a car, or a vehicle in this case, is, to quote Elon Musk, as much a software company as a hardware company, is a rather modern problem of making an automobile. I think confined probably to the last 15 or 20 years, that would not have even been on the minds of an automobile maker for most of the car's history.
Right. And it has its own challenges, but it also has its own rewards, meaning that the customer can have the benefit of continual improvement of the vehicle. It'll actually get better as they drive it. You'll get more range. You'll get new features. Maybe a particular external lamp might suddenly start blinking as a charge indicator, where it wasn't thought of before, but now we determine that it should do that. And we can do that because we control the firmware and software and hardware. I have a neighbor of mine. He works for big OEM for their electric vehicle division, and actually recently left. He was lamenting that because the particular OEM that he worked for, they didn't own virtually any of the firmware and hardware of the vehicle. So whenever a change was needed, it was something that was coordinated with all of the tier ones. It took a minimum of a year. It was tens of millions of dollars. That system does not enable rapid changes and improvements in the software.
It feels like being vertically integrated as a tech-related company is a must these days.
Yes. Otherwise, you're at the whim of people who are making profit off of time and money and product, and taking you out of the loop. And I think we have to be 1,000% inside the loop. We control the product and the customer experience. There's stuff that we're not going to be vertically integrated with, like glass. We don't know anything about making glass, and there's companies that make glass far better than us. But I have to tell you, I mean, since we've talked, we've hired and fired companies doing stuff for us. I don't want to say what or who, but technical things that made us as a company say, screw that, we're bringing this in-house. Hire the people necessary to do it in-house because it's going to be cheaper and better and faster. And that has absolutely proven to be the case.
In our first conversation, you said, quote, "We are primarily a solar power company who's focused first on solar mobility, but we see solar power being integral to not only mobility, but so many other needs. And we realized that it couldn't be an afterthought, that instead it needed to be a very large part of the research, development, the intellectual property that we create to make solar mobility possible," end quote. And co-founder and co-CEO Chris Anthony said in a recent YouTube interview / factory tour with Kim Java, quote, "We came up with really lightweight solar. It adds less than 8 pounds to the whole vehicle. You can get 700 watts of power. 700 watts of power for a vehicle that only uses 100 watt hours per mile is pretty significant," end quote. So can you go into detail about what innovations Aptera has made in solar panel development that enables them to be as light as they are? And can you break down why that 700 watts of power statistic is impressive and explain the technology to me like I'm 5?
The 700 watts is impressive because in our case, it's helpful not to necessarily think about the instantaneous power, 700 watts, for example. It's helpful to think about the kilowatt hours or the energy stored over the period of a day. So that 700 watts times so many hours. Now, it's not 700 watts all day. It's a peak of 700. So, it'll be 200 and 300 and 400 and 500. Say then it'll peak at noon at 700 and ramp back down. But over the period of a day, the interval of that, it adds up to 4 kilowatt hours here in San Diego. So 4 kilowatt hours for us is about 40 miles of range because we burn about 100 watt hours per mile. So it's really hard for people to get their head around it, but it basically decouples you from the idea of the fuel station or the home EV charging or having to charge the vehicle at all, except for long trips. But people don't do long trips every day. People drive an average of 40 miles a day. So that's why it's meaningful, is because that number completely, on an average basis, completely decouples Aptera from the grid.
The average American commute is about 40 miles round trip.
So if we could take that average commute, which is where virtually all of our CO2 production is, which is where virtually all of our petroleum combustion is, and if we have a way of just taking that out of the energy ecosystem altogether, it will be a massive transformation in how we use energy in the country. And that was why we ended up at that number, because when we said, we sort of asking ourselves, well, how many cells can we fit on the vehicle? Like, well, what if we just cover the whole damn thing with solar cells? Because it's that important. The vehicle is so efficient. Every single cell we add onto the vehicle, that's like an appreciable amount of more range. So that's the meaning of that number. Now, you asked about the process, and I think through Google Patents, you could look at our latest patent. It was issued a couple weeks or maybe months ago, maybe 2 months ago or so, on the solar panel production process. That patent is really the result of almost 3 years of work. It's 60 pages, it's an extraordinary amount of work by the team. And it really defines what that is and those processes and how to do it. The reason why that is important is because when we went to who we thought at the time were the experts, which was the former team from Airbus that made the Solar Impulse plane, that solar plane that flew around the world. And it had curved wings, of course. It had curved solar cells around the wings. And when we talked to that team to learn about how they did it, we were surprised to learn that they had no thought as to longevity. They were even skeptical that any of those solar cells worked at all anymore because of the vicissitudes of vibration and bending and cracking. Part of what makes it unique is that you can't just put a regular solar panel on a vehicle, on a road vehicle, even an RV or a boat, because of the bending and vibrations and everything else. It destroys them very quickly. Not that you can see it. You can't see that destruction. The panel looks fine to the observer when you test it for its power output. We have ways of examining micro cracks in the crystalline structure as part of our IP. We developed that so that we knew that we weren't damaging them when we were manufacturing them. When you look at all those things, you realize very quickly these panels, they won't last. It won't last more than a couple of months on a road vehicle. So you have to do something different.
So is that the key innovation there, the durability, the idea of a curved solar panel, or I guess to quote the 1988 patent, contoured solar generator? That's been around since at least the late 1980s, but it sounds like the innovation here is the durability aspect.
Yes, the compound curve, so not just curve, but curves in two directions, coupled with durability necessary for automotive use, coupled with a very favorable weight suitable for automotive use. Lightweight and durability, really. That's the primary, I'd say, that polymer stack that we have for the encapsulants, the formulation of it, the recipe, and how and when and where it's heated and under what pressures and all of those things. It is like a recipe, so to speak, like for Coke or the Colonel's herbs and spices for his chicken. And that's what's necessary to make a panel that lasts for 15 years and continues to provide power and doesn't degrade and is also lightweight.
All right, so Steve Fambro is bringing out that their mission is to make not only Aptera vehicles to where they can go 40, 50, 60 miles, but to completely have transportation disconnect from the grid to where you're getting all your energy from solar power. And whether that is small vehicles, large vehicles, they want to completely disconnect transportation from off the grid so you don't have to plug in at all. That's a pretty big task, but I believe they can get there. They're actually already on their way to getting the solar range improved and to have it produced on other vehicles. He also talked about the PI 1. No doubt that that is practically already finished. That has to be done now. But the PI 2, we know that he said that that probably won't be finished until the end of this month, July, beginning of August. So we'll yet to hear more improvements on what's going to happen with that part of this or that stage of the vehicle. Also, that Aptera is going to be more than an automotive company, that they are actually going to be a software company because they have to, especially if they're going to be given over the air updates. And no doubt there's going to be a lot of changes that come with that. You probably get more mileage. And like he said, there'll probably be maybe a blinking light showing the charge rate of the vehicle. And when it's starting and when it's almost completed. So I think that would be very good. But also they have to continue with the software updates because of maybe bugs and hacks, somebody trying to hack into your vehicle. So I mean that's going to be a continuous thing, so that you can be protected from thieves and hackers. So no doubt that's going to be awesome as well. But he also brought out that they also making a lot of in-house products, and that is going to help save Aptera a lot of money as well as also help bring in money. He said that they were working with some companies that they had to just let go, that they could actually make whatever it is that they're doing in house. And that's going to be, fantastic so that they can actually get the vehicle out on the road a lot sooner than waiting for somebody else to produce their product to put into their vehicles. I see a lot of positive things with that. That's what helped Tesla get out in front of the OEMs. And so Aptera is doing a lot of wonderful things. And one of the things that they're doing that's going to help them out is their solar product. They're coming out to where they are basically designing their own solar product for other companies. And I think that's fantastic. One company that comes to mind, we already talked about it, is actually Polydrop. And you can see how they actually take the panels that they're making and they design it to fit the actual size of the top of the vehicle that they want to put the solar panels on top of, which means they get a full coverage and the maximum amount of solar panel on the vehicle. Like the Polydrop panels can take in about, I believe they said, 1,300 kilowatts of power. So that is just practically awesome, as well as with Avarice baggage vehicles that are working at the airports that collect the baggage and take them from the airport to the airplane and vice versa. So Aptera is doing some fantastic things. But tell me how you feel about what all Aptera is doing. I know for me, that's very exciting to see that they're on this mission, that they want to take every vehicle that uses oil or gas or diesel off the road and have it to where they don't even have to plug in, to where you just get all your energy and power from the sun. And I can see that that is a actual process that they can actually do. It'll probably be gradual, but I can see them actually fulfilling that if they stay on their mission. But anyway, once again, tell me how you feel. Tell me how you think about everything that Aptera is doing. They're actually going to grow into a really big company, and I can see them doing some fantastic things in the future. But anyway, this is getting kind of long, so I'm going to give a shout out to my patrons. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. I always got to give a shout out to you because you help me out in so many ways. And also for those, if you're new here, hit the like, ring the bell, subscribe. You catch all my videos when they come out. You guys take care. Y'all enjoy the rest of your day. We'll catch you in the next video. All right. Adios.